Okay, so now in order to see the effect of a tax, we've talked about it in terms of first the equilibrium. That's kind of our comparison, right? Where we had the total surplus equal to $32. Okay, so now we're going to try and look at what the total surplus is when we have a tax that's equal to $2, and we're saying where the price buyers pay is equal to $5. Okay, so what we can do is to kind of start, we can say, okay, well, we do have this amount for the equilibrium. And now we're saying, okay, well, the price that buyers pay when we have a tax is equal to this $5. Okay. Now, is there any other information that we kind of have here before we can be able to find consumer and producer surplus? Well, another thing we can try and find is what is the price that sellers receive. And so remember that we have a formula for this. It's tax per unit. Tax per unit is equal to the price buyers pay minus the price sellers receive. Okay, and so if we say this in terms of the numbers, we could conceivably put those numbers in. The tax per unit is equal to 2, the price buyers pay is equal to 5, then what is going to be the price sellers receive? It's going to be 3. Okay, so we also have this information. Okay, so what we can do is kind of bring this down here. And we basically say, okay, this is 3, and this is the price sellers receive under the tax. Okay, so the remaining question we can ask is, what is this quantity? So we could either look at this point here or this point here. The answer would be the same. Okay, in terms of looking at this point, this is what is the quantity demanded at a price of $5. Okay, and so again, we can return to the table. At a price of $5, what's the quantity demanded? It's going to be 6. Okay, so we could write that here. Okay, another way we could look at it again is we could say the price, what happens in terms of the supply, what's the quantity supplied when the price is 3? So again, we can look at the price equal to 3. What do we see in terms of the quantity supplied? Again, it's 6. Okay, all right, so since we have these numbers, we can now try to figure out what is the total surplus. Okay, so in terms of the consumer surplus, again, what we try to do is look below the demand curve and above the price buyers pay. And so the consumer surplus is going to be this triangle here. Okay? All right, so in terms of the numbers, consumer surplus, again, is a triangle. So again, it's this 1/2 base times height. And so again, it's going to be, well, 1/2 times what? Well, in this case, the base has changed. It's now a quantity of 6. So it's going to be 1/2 times 6, and then it's going to be 8 minus 5. Okay? All right, and so what is going to be the consumer surplus? It's going to be 9. Okay? 1/2 times 6 is 3, times 3 equals 9. All right, so then what about the producer surplus? Okay, so the producer surplus, remember, is the area that's below the price sellers receive, but above the supply curve. Okay, and so that's going to be represented by this area here. Okay. All right, so in terms of the producer surplus, again, we have a triangle. So again, we have the same formula for the area. And so this is going to be 1/2, again, times the quantity, which is 6, times 3 minus 0. Okay, and so what do we end up with? We end up once again with a 9. Okay, so one other thing we need to establish here is the tax revenue. Now we know this is not 0 this time because we know that we have what? That we have a tax. So the question is what is this tax revenue? Now in terms of the formula, the tax revenue is supposed to be equal to this tax per unit times the number of units we have. Okay, so it's the tax revenue is the tax per unit times the number of units that we have. And so the way that we can rewrite this is that it's the price buyers pay minus the price sellers receive times the quantity, okay, that exists under the tax. And so where do we see that on this graph? Okay, it's kind of difficult, but where do we actually see it? Okay, so in terms of this, notice that we have the price buyers pay minus the price sellers receive. Okay, and so where do we actually see that? where do we actually get this tax? Okay, the tax revenue. Okay, so it's going to be something with this height, okay, this amount, and then with this base being the quantity. Okay, and so what are we going to get for the tax revenue? It's going to be represented by this area here. Okay, so in terms of the numbers, it's a rectangle. So if it's a rectangle, it's going to be the base times the height. And so we see it's going to be 6 times 5 minus 3. Okay, and so what does that equal? It's 6 times 2, and so it's 12. And so then what do we have for our total surplus? Okay, our total surplus then is going to equal the summation of these numbers. And so we're going to have 30. Okay, so what do we notice about the tax? The tax decreases total surplus. And again, comparing it to where we have the total surplus for the equilibrium, it decreases the total surplus by $2. Okay, and so remember, what is this called? This is the decline in total surplus from the efficient outcome, which is the equilibrium, due to a government policy being the tax in this case, that reduces the quantity, in this case, from 8 to 6. Okay, and so we call that the deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss is the $2. Okay, and so what is it equal to? It's actually equal to this triangle here. Okay, the number is the same, and in this case, it's $2.